Russia, it's weaponizing Melania's past. I don't know if you know this, but on Russian TV, they frequently show Melania nude in order to mock Donald Trump. So they show all these photos of Melania. By the way, Melania's previously made posts about how proud she is of her nudes, but did you know that after Donald Trump and Melania met, she got what was called an Einstein visa? She was treated like a genius, an exceptional achievement visa that gave her a fast track to become a United States citizen.
What if the First Lady's quiet wasn't grace, but calculation? What if her elegance was never about style, but sleight of hand? In 2025, as Donald Trump limps through legal turmoil and political freefall, it's not opponents pulling him down. It's his history now weaponized by the woman who once stood beside him at ceremonies and cameras, Melania. Russian state television has launched a ruthless takedown, broadcasting her nude photos not to shock, but to shame. This isn't gossip, it's global gamesmanship. Russia isn't just mocking, it's menacing. And why now? Because even Putin knows it. The Trump dynasty isn't just falling, it's festering, and Melania's part in it? It was never a love story. Not a first lady, a first asset, a dazzling distraction from greed.
So I think we should explore, how did Donald Trump meet Melania on or around the same time he was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell? We should build a timeline here. You see, Donald Trump went to a club in Manhattan called the Kit Kat Club, where there were parties that were frequently thrown for very rich Manhattan elites, businessmen, to mingle and find very young models from Eastern Europe. And Melania was a model from Eastern Europe who was brought to the United States, who would attend these parties where the rich men would show up and mingle with the models.
Abuse and enforced silence. Forget everything you thought you knew about their so-called love story. Donald and Melania's union didn't bloom from passion, it was engineered. In the shadows, where modeling gigs, immigration loopholes, and Manhattan's murkiest elites converged. Their public meet-cute was a fashion party. The real encounter? A choreographed introduction, arranged by a man who traded influence between modeling moguls and real estate tycoons. When Melania stepped into Trump's world, he was already entrenched in the Epstein-Maxwell circle parties where women weren't guests but inventory. Melania wasn't just a Slovenian model. She was positioned fast-tracked with an Einstein visa, a privilege usually reserved for prodigies, not photo spreads.
Let's dig through this timeline, shall we? So what was Donald Trump doing in 1997, the year before he meets Melania? Well, in 1997, he's out there partying with Epstein and Ghislaine. This is from the London Sunday Mirror. This is 1997. How sweet. Trump's Brit of all right. Just weeks after ditching his second wife, America's best-known billionaire Donald Trump has fallen under the spell of a 20-year-old English girl. Was before Melania, okay? This is 1997. Trump 50, who has failed in his bid to secure the services of Princess Diana's butler, Paul Burrell, was in search of another British trophy when he met London model Anushka DeGiorgio at a party in Manhattan. Several American millionaires already had their eyes on Anushka, but she was there with Robert Maxwell's daughter, Ghislaine, who has introduced several of her attractive friends to the property developer.
This wasn't romance, it was strategy. And the woman mocked on Russian airwaves today may have entered through a pipeline of recruitment, not love. Here's the timeline they don't want you to follow. In 1997, Donald Trump was photographed partying with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, known associates tied to sex trafficking and exploitation. Just a year later, he coincidentally meets Melania Noss, a foreign model introduced into elite New York social circles by Trump's longtime associate Paolo Zampoli. Zampoli, whose influence bridged fashion, immigration, and politics, helped place Melania in Trump's orbit. Soon after, Trump sponsors her for an Einstein visa, an immigration path reserved for individuals with extraordinary abilities, despite little evidence of such qualifications in Melania's modeling career. While Trump publicly demonized immigrants and railed against so-called chain migration, He helped Melania acquire citizenship and later brought in her family under the very same system. This wasn't irony, it was intentional. Melania wasn't just given citizenship. She was given a role, play the silent, foreign, submissive wife never ask questions, but Melania's complicity runs deeper. After the infamous Access Hollywood tape surfaced where Trump bragged about sexually assaulting women, Melania dismissed it as mere locker room talk. He was 59 years old, yet she excused it as immature boyish behavior, even joking. "I have 2 boys at home, my son and my husband." That was no naive defense, it was damage control. She wasn't horrified, she was strategic. Melania knew. Her influence came not from speaking out, but from staying quiet and smiling through the chaos. That silence wasn't ignorance, it was protection. She wasn't shielding a man. She was guarding a brand. She also played an active role in Trump's racist birther conspiracy against Barack Obama. On national television, Melania cast doubt on Obama's citizenship, falsely claiming his certificate of live birth wasn't a real birth certificate like hers from Slovenia. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a dog whistle tailored for Trump's base. And while she plagiarized Michelle Obama's speech at the 2016 Republican National Convention nearly word for word, she did so without shame erasing a black woman's voice while defending her husband's attacks on that very family. Melania wasn't just complicit in Trumpism, she was a willing mouthpiece of it. When Trump's affair with Stormy Daniels became public, Melania's fury wasn't over betrayal, it was overexposure. According to former aide Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, Melania fumed not about infidelity, but that the porn hooker got a Vogue cover. That's who Melania is: calculated, image-driven, competitive. She wasn't heartbroken. She was enraged that someone else stole her spotlight. Her values were never about decency, they were about branding. She stood by Trump not out of love, but loyalty to the empire they built together. And as that empire frayed, she didn't crumble. She profited. By 2022, Melania pivoted into grifting full-time, NFTs, meme coins, overpriced collectibles. She sold pixelated flowers for $150 and charged $155,000 for brief speaking appearances, while her personal stylist earned $18,000 per month paid by Trump's political PAC, which was funded by working-class supporters. The same people chanting "lock her up" and demanding the Epstein client list failed to recognize the Epstein-linked man in their own party, and the woman standing silently by his side. Melania, the immigrant who benefited from chain migration, stayed silent while Trump caged children and scapegoated foreigners. She didn't rise above it, she styled it, she posed for it. She profited from it. Even Russia used her nude photos as propaganda not to shame her, but to mock the image of American leadership. The truth was obvious. This wasn't a love story. It was a casting call. Melania didn't fall into Trump's world by accident. She signed on, eyes wide open. She wasn't a victim. She was a co-founder. And now, as Trump faces indictment after indictment, Melania has all but vanished. No rallies, no interviews, no defense. Her silence now isn't poise, it's self-preservation. She sees what's coming and she's not going down with him. Because in the end, Melania Trump was never just the quiet, reluctant first lady. She was the brand's most polished lie. When Melania Trump stood on stage during the 2016 Republican National Convention, she didn't just plagiarize Michelle Obama's speech, she copied her spirit. Line after line, Michelle's words about hard work, values, and integrity were lifted, stripped of context, and delivered without acknowledgement. A black first lady's message was co-opted by the wife of a man who had spent years questioning Barack Obama's citizenship. Melania presented it all with a straight face, as if the nation wouldn't notice. But we did. That moment wasn't just about plagiarism, it was erasure, entitlement, and a declaration that nothing is sacred, not even another woman's legacy. And when caught, rather than apologize, the Trump team doubled down. Because in Trump world, truth isn't a value, it's a threat. Melania wasn't embarrassed. She was emboldened. In her mind, it wasn't honesty that mattered, it was applause. And as long as the crowd clapped, the lie lived on. By 2022, Melania had evolved into something far more dangerous than a complicit spouse. She became a grifter. She launched NFTs, meme coin schemes, and sold overpriced collectibles with the flair of a late-night QVC host. Her Mida Rose token, a pixelated digital flower priced at $150, was sold to Trump's working-class supporters. Her speaking fees reached $155,000 per event, often just to sit silently and smile. Her stylist was paid $18,000 per month, money funneled from Trump's political PAC, funded by donors who could barely pay rent. Melania wasn't just marketing junk. She was selling herself, a brand, a fantasy, an illusion of elegance and power. Behind the image was a woman milking the MAGA movement while quietly laughing all the way to the bank. Even now, Melania continues to grift with her meme coin, a project that collapsed shortly after launch. She promotes her book, I Stand Proudly Behind My Nude Modeling Work, and remains surrounded by the same luxury, funded not by merit but manipulation. Meanwhile, her stylist continues to earn $18,000 a month from PAC money while her husband's supporters cry for the Epstein client list, somehow ignoring the man in their own ranks with the most obvious connections. They fund her lifestyle, and in return, she offers nothing but silence and carefully staged photo ops. But to understand Melania's role, you have to go back to the beginning, the Kit Kat Club, a velvet-draped, champagne-soaked Manhattan venue where moguls mingled with models under the guise of fashion. That's where Trump met Melania. Not in some romantic whirlwind, but in a transaction. He wasn't courting a partner, he was shopping for one, and Melania wasn't swept off her feet. She knew exactly what was happening. That origin story matters. It explains the cold chemistry, the emotionless photo ops, the mechanical interviews. This was never a love story. It was a casting call. Melania's own words reveal the calculation. She met Trump in 1996 at a fashion party during New York Fashion Week. He arrived with another woman. She made him give his number just to see whether it was a business or home line. He gave her all of them. She knew what he wanted, and she knew what she was willing to accept. Within weeks, they were seeing each other. She later recalled their great energy and connection, but skipped over the more transactional details. Their relationship wasn't built on affection, it was built on access. And the contradictions only pile up from there. Melania, an immigrant who benefited from chain migration, stayed silent while her husband demonized others who came to America the same way. The woman who dismissed Trump's grabbed them by the P******Y tape as locker room talk. The first lady who sighed, I have 2 boys at home, my husband and my son, trying to pass off misogyny as boyish charm. The same Melania who wore a jacket that said, I really don't care, do you? While visiting immigrant children in cages? That wasn't apathy, that was a message. She didn't rise above Trumpism, she styled it, and when Trump was caught cheating with Stormy Daniels, from Wanda Sykes to Cher to Robert De Niro, some of entertainment's boldest voices didn't hold back. They called Donald Trump a fraud, a threat, a ticking time bomb. They spoke out, on stage, in interviews behind closed doors, long before the riots, the indictments, the unraveling, but America wasn't listening. Now, for the first time, we go behind the scenes to uncover what they said, what they feared, and what they predicted with chilling accuracy. This isn't about politics. It's about the warnings we ignored, and the price we paid. The music icon didn't mince words. When she tweeted, Trump is a f***ing traitor, the backlash was instant. Trolls attacked. Headlines exploded. But so did something else. A wave of fearless celebrities stepping forward to say what millions were already thinking. Cher's rage wasn't performative. It was personal. I've seen real fascists, she warned in a late-night interview. This is how it starts. The Trump machine tried to brush her off, just another washed-up liberal shouting into the void. But the truth was harder to ignore. They were afraid. Afraid of her voice, her reach, her refusal to stay silent. Because Cher wasn't just resisting Trump, she was exposing him. She saw through the illusion, a reality TV common who rode ego, fear, and spectacle straight into power and refused to exit the stage. She had the platform. She had the history. And most of all, she had the guts to drag his carefully crafted image through the fire. Robert Dyro, once known for delivering cold fury on screen, now turned that same wrath toward Donald Trump, not as a character, but as a man. He's a punk. A mutt, a dog, a pig, Dyro snarled. This wasn't a script. It was rage, years in the making. His attacks weren't nuanced. They were full-throated declarations of war. He doesn't pay taxes. He's gaming society. He's stupid. The room didn't know whether to cheer or gasp. Trump loyalists fumed, but the damage had been done. Dyro wasn't just insulting the former president, he was drawing a portrait of a man rotting from the inside out while pretending to rule. This wasn't just personal, it was national. One voice at a time, the illusion began to shatter. What made this movement different was how voices began stacking, one atop the other, Wanda Sykes with her fiery humor, Cher channeling political rage, Dyro with explosive contempt. It was a trifecta the Trump camp couldn't silence. They tried their usual tricks, call them washed up, crazy, out of touch, but the public wasn't buying it. These weren't clout-chasing influencers. These were cultural titans with nothing to lose and everything to say. Their words weren't just critiques. They were wake-up calls. And as Trump fumbled his responses, the truth became blindingly obvious. The emperor had no clothes, and the most iconic voices in America were standing before millions, pointing, laughing, and finally being heard. Jane Fonda called Trump a criminal. Jim Carrey painted grotesque portraits of him week after week. Sacha Baron Cohen called Trumpism the greatest threat to democracy since the Nazis. These weren't exaggerations. They were warning sirens. Fox News tried to spin it as Hollywood, elite rage, but the cultural tide was shifting. Younger voters, activists, even suburban moms began to echo the sentiment. If they're pissed, maybe we should be too. What began as satire evolved into a resistance. The man who once thrived on headlines was now buried beneath them, not in glory, but humiliation. His ego, once bloated by applause, was now deflating under punchlines he couldn't control, and then came the quote. In a tell-all book, Trump reportedly told his chief of staff, "Hitler did a lot of good things." The crowd laughed nervously. "Maybe he meant Steve Hitler," joked a comedian. But the unease lingered. Wanda Sykes cut through the noise. How does a man steal classified documents, sleep with porn stars, dodge taxes, and still scream witch hunt? It wasn't a joke. It was reality wrapped in disbelief. Her punchlines carried more truth than Trump's legal defenses. The audience didn't just laugh, they erupted, a mix of anger and relief. Comedy became catharsis. Justice delivered one punchline at a time. Trumpists fumed. They called her a traitor, but Wanda didn't flinch. You don't love America. You love a grifter who fooled you into thinking your hate was patriotism. The truth stung. This wasn't just a roast, it was an autopsy. The cult of Trump wasn't just being mocked, it was being exposed. Asked to assess Trump's presidency, one person said simply, "Horrible." Another chimed in, "Gout has a higher approval rating," asked what Trump could do to improve things. Resign. The sentiment was raw and unfiltered. Then came the moment that revealed everything. Sacha Baron Cohen, disguised and performing at a right-wing rally, sang lyrics dripping with satire. "Inject Obama with the Wuhan flu." The crowd cheered, not realizing they were the punchline. But when they figured it out, rage turned physical. They chased him off stage. It wasn't just a prank gone wrong. It was a snapshot of Trump's America, violent, gullible, tribal. They're not hiding anymore, Cohen later warned. And he was right. This wasn't politics. This was cultural warfare. The threat wasn't abstract. It was marching in broad daylight. Robert Dyro saw it coming. So did Wanda, Cher, Rosie, Sacha, and countless others. They didn't just criticize, they documented. Their art became activism. And while politicians debated both sides, these performers lit the fire of truth. Dyro declared, "F Trump, live on air." It wasn't vulgarity. It was a release rage, grief, disbelief all colliding. Trumpists tried to drown it out. But they forgot. Thyro doesn't break character, especially when that character is the soul of a nation on the edge. Rosie O'Donnell knew it too. Her feud with Trump went from personal to historic. He mocked her weight, her sexuality, her sanity. But she didn't retreat, she roared back. Her voice wasn't revenge, it was revolution. She warned of the narcissist with nuclear codes. And millions of women heard her dot as Trump's legal troubles mounted. Even late-night comedy stopped being comedy. Stephen Colbert said it best, "We used to laugh at the president. Now we laugh to survive him." Jimmy Kimmel added, "We're not just watching democracy collapse, we're raiding it." The punchlines were sharp, but the laughs came from fear. Wanda skewered Trump's obsession with attacking trans kids. "Less than 1% of the population," she said. "And you're focused on that instead of climate change?" It wasn't just political commentary, it was moral clarity. Trump, she said, made everyone angry. That whole family, rotten to the core. And the price of their ego? Taxpayer money, broken norms, and a tacky-ass trip to Mar-a-Lago. By then, satire had turned into national therapy. Barbara Streisand tweeted, "Trump doesn't love America. He loves attention." That was the core. It was never about governance. It was about applause. Trump didn't care about country, just the show. And the audience, like sheep, kept clapping. Wanda wasn't having it. "White people, this is your problem. We tried to tell y'all." Now, it was celebrities, not senators, who were holding the moral line. Thyro issued a warning. He's not going quietly. He'll take everything down with him. And he did. The lies, the violence, the insurrection, it all unfolded like prophecy. In a speech about art and fascism, Thyro reminded the world, art is a threat to autocrats. That's why we are a threat. Trump slashed funding for the arts. He threatened creativity. He imposed tariffs on foreign films. He treated culture like the enemy, but art fights back. And it fights without bullets, with passion. With truth. This wasn't just an American issue. It was global. The call wasn't just to watch, but to act, vote, organize, protest. The only thing standing between democracy and disaster was a mic, a camera, and the courage to use them. Trump didn't lose power. He weaponized it. Turned his base into a mob and his grievances into gospel. It's no longer politics, it's a cult. And millions are still ready to follow him into the fire. The only defense left? Truth, broadcast from every stage, screen, and stand-up mic in the country. So, where do we go from here? If Wanda, Cher, Thyro, Rosie, and Sacha were the alarm bells, did we hear them in time? Or did America get too comfortable in chaos? The truth isn't hiding. It's being screamed by comedians, sung by icons, and tweeted by